I grew up here at Clegg Chapel, the church that I now pastor. And, I sang in the choir. I was a trustee at the church. And I sang with the Spiritual Lights for years. And my call to ministry was one that I certainly did not want to do. And I just simply said, okay, I'm in a ministry, I'm singing, and that's doing fine, so I'm going to stick with that, because I never wanted to be a preacher.
I'm Diane Cash, and I am originally from Windsor, North Carolina, Bertie County. I grew up in a small town, country town. I am the oldest of 11 children. It was just a large family. And we grew up on, we didn't own a farm, but we worked on the farm. And I started working in offices when I was about 14 years old under some special programs that they had for underprivileged kids. And then I came to Durham and went to Durham Business College. Like most people out of my hometown, go somewhere to go to school. And that's how I met Pastor Cash. Believe it or not, we met at Hardee's on Guest Road, and he bought me a hamburger. We were introduced by people that we work with, and we got married, and they got divorced. And we've been married some 47 years now. And there's not a whole lot to tell about me. I worked for Verizon for 32 years. I've been retired from there, and now I've been doing real estate for the last 16 years. My office is in Durham over on Highway 54. And I've been at Greater Clegg since we got married, and we left for a while and went over to First Ledge Rock. Stayed there some 5 years, and then we've been at Greater Clegg for the last 28 years. At the telephone company, I was a secretary, and I had probably 10 different jobs there, and finally left as a facilitator, a training facilitator. That was probably my favorite job, but there's nothing quite like what we're doing here. But during all that time, we got married. We had 2 children, Tony Cash Patterson and Louis Earl Cash II. And they are now grown, and we've got 5 grandchildren. Yeah. And I have been, don't ask me how long I've been preaching. That's a long time. Well, yeah, do you know how long?
No, I don't.
Well, I mean, we've been in ministry, say together, we're like in singing groups and stuff like that, because when we got married, he wasn't even preaching at that time. And I think the children were probably 7, 8 years old when he got into ministry. And I actually became a minister under his ministry at Greater Clegg. We were in the old church over there, and ministry was nothing that I thought I would ever be into. And if anybody mentioned it to me, I'd be like, well, one of us is already a minister. We don't need no 2 preachers in one family. But the Lord didn't have it that way. And then suddenly one day I spoke with him about it, and we talked about it. I had been praying about it and trying to decide, is this really from the Lord? Is this just something And then finally we talked about it. He actually made me make an appointment to come to his office and talk to him. And then Reverend Pastor Thornton was sort of our mentor at that time. And we went down and we talked with him about it. And that's how I got into ministry.
My name is Louis Cash. I'll leave the middle name out. It's not important. I grew up here in Person County. Went to Person County, educated in the Person County school system. And, my later years, I went to Shaw University. And then I went to North Carolina Theological Seminary. And I grew up here at Clegg Chapel, the church that I now pastor. And, I sang in the choir. I was a trustee at the church. And my call to ministry, and I sang with the spiritual lights for years. And my call to ministry was one that I certainly did not want to do. And the more the Lord pressed it upon me, I just simply said, okay, I'm in a ministry, I'm singing, and that's doing fine, so I'm going to stick with that, because I never wanted to be a preacher. I had to really, actually, to tell you the truth, at the first I wasn't even praying about it because there is no preachers in my family. Not a single one, no uncles, no grandfathers, no dad, no, and but it just kept pressing, it kept pressing on me. And so, one day, Reverend George Allison was the pastor when I started getting the calls. And we were living in Durham at the time. And I remember he preached at Cameron Grove. And, and I asked him, I said, listen, Doc, will you stop by my house before you go back to Hillsborough? And he did. And, and I ran my whole story by him. And he sat and listened and everything. And, because, and I was sharing with him the dreams that I was having and, how unrestful I was and everything. And so when I finished sharing my story with him, I said, what'd you think? He said, I don't know. That's up to you. That's between you and the Lord. I can't say. And so, and listen, so I went years after that because Reverend Allison, he left Clegg's and Reverend Thornton came. And I never had that conversation with Reverend Thornton. And I remember it was a homecoming service. And I remember Reverend Thornton was preaching. And, and that day I was late getting to church, and, we was in the community center and chairs was in the aisle, cause, it was homecoming. It was a big day. And so when I walked in, I sit down and, Reverend Thornton started preaching and he reached the climax of his sermon. And then he came and then he said to me, he said, Bro Louis, come up here real quick. And so, I got up, I went up. And he said, the Lord said, well, to tell you, he calling you into the gospel ministry. Oh man, that was the last thing I wanted to hear. And so, and then, at that time, I was, I had no choice but to accept the call because the Lord had called me out in front of all these people and everything, and I knew, I just kind of knew that, that the call was there. And so, I started preaching. But what I said was, I said, I'm going to preach, but I'm never going to pastor. I don't want to pastor nobody's church. I don't want to be a leader of no congregation, no place. And so, and I said, well, and then I'll just preach when I get an engagement because, I didn't think that I would get that many calls to be coming to preach. Man, and plus at that time I had our youth choir here at the church, and our youth choir was, it was between a 75 to 100 voice youth choir, and so we, I was doing that, and I was singing with the spiritual lights, and I was supposed to have been preaching, but I was still singing, and so, then finally one day. By that time, we had the Voices for Christ. That's when they had come on, And we had a cookout. I remember she'll get upset and I called her yeah. What's Sylvia? It's Sylvia's house in Mebane. And I had
Hillsborough.
was it Hillsborough? Okay. And I left. We left, and the next that was on a Saturday, and on that Sunday, I was supposed to be going to First Les Rock. They had called me, and I just said, okay, I'll go fill the pulpit for that Sunday. But I always had in my mind, I'm not pastoring anywhere. And so we left Yaya's house, and so Diane said, well, where you going? I said, well, I'm going and find this church. So tomorrow morning, when we get up, I know how to get there. I won't have to be looking for it. And so, we did. We left Hillsborough that night, and we went and found the church. It was dark. And when I pulled onto the church driveway and everything, I was circling around. I said, oh, okay, this is a nice little church. And so, I stood in the parking lot and I looked around and everything. And so when we left on our way home, she wasn't saying anything. And I asked her, I said, well, what's wrong with you? Are you all right? She said, yeah, I'm fine. She said, that's where you're going to be. I said, what do you mean that's where I'm going to be? She said, that's what God going to call you to start your ministry pastoring.